Matt, this is for you. Adam Hogue from NBC Sports Chicago.
Okay.
Congratulations. You obviously have the defensive background. What is your offensive philosophy? What do you believe in, and how do you think that's going to mesh with what's here, specifically the quarterback that's here?
Yeah, so the philosophy of the team is really what I stated there in terms of the foundational pieces. So we want again, an attacking effort-based offense, okay, that has great mental focus and intensity, and we're going to measure every single one of those. Obviously, taking care of the ball is the most important thing, and then being smart in our situations, right? Being smart pre-snap, post-snap, and understanding the game of football. And it's our job as coaches to educate that. You know, so in terms of like philosophy of offense, sure, I want an attacking style, scoring points, right, protecting the football. You know, those are things that we're working through, you know, with the staff. You know, we just hired a staff member here now, so we'll get to work soon on that. So that's what we're going to do.
Dan Weeder from the Chicago Tribune. Good morning, guys. Ryan, you've come from an organization that's had a successful run throughout most of your time there. This organization has not been able to sustain success for a long period of time. Out of the gates, what are some of the organizational flaws and weaknesses here that you want to strengthen as fast as possible?
Yeah, I think this covers all organizations. And one of the biggest things I've learned was getting everyone on the same page. When the coaching staff and the personnel department are speaking the same language, the personnel staff is acquiring the players that fit our system, then we're going to be off to a good start. And I've been in this situation. It hasn't always been all great in championships. There's been a process to get to where that team is right now.
Hub Arkish, guys, from Pro Football Weekly and Shaw Media. Congratulations. Ryan, for you, the Bengals 2 years ago were the worst team in football. Now they're in the Super Bowl. Do you see this as a rebuilding situation or just a reloading situation? Do you think you can be competitive immediately?
Yeah, absolutely do I think we can be competitive. And the beautiful thing about football is what we just saw with the Bengals. Everyone, once the Super Bowl is played, goes back to 0-0 and has the ability to, improve their roster, make changes. We all know it's fluid on a yearly basis, so we're going to attack it, and our goal is always going to be in contention and win games.
Dion Miller from ABC7 here in Chicago. Ryan, my question for you is, what is your familiarity with Justin? What are your evaluations of Justin Fields, and what do you feel he needs to take that next step and be that quarterback that the Bears need?
Yeah, I remember watching Justin a lot. I'm close with Ryan Day as well, the head coach of Ohio State. And like any player, support and development. Getting back to the details, doing the fundamentals, and taking the approach to get reach that ceiling. And that's hard work, that's detail, and, I'm excited to see him grow.
Matt, Jason Leisure with the Sun-Times.
Hey, Jason.
As a longtime defensive coach, what are your thoughts about being accountable and in charge of the offense going forward?
Yeah, I'm excited about that, working with Luke and the rest of the offensive staff that we acquire to the principles of our football team. That's going to be a process that we go through. A lot of discussions of how we operate, how we measure things, how we measure those things that I talked about, those foundational pieces. So that's going to be a work in progress all the way through until the first time the guys get here in April. So we're excited about getting that done.
Hey, it's Mark Rohde from The Score. Welcome both. Matt, my question is for you. Justin Fields, do you look at him as a franchise quarterback, a guy that can be great and lead and win because of?
Yeah, so right now we're looking at everybody through the same lens, meaning that we're going to go back and we're going to watch those guys with a fresh eye, and we're going to see where they are, okay, in terms of what they need to develop on. So I'm a big process guy, so I want to be able to help the player. So when you look at the player-coach relationship, it's got to be like this, okay? So one of the ways we help all players, from player A to player Z, we're going to develop a plan for those guys, Mark, okay, to get better. And it's usually only 3 or 4 things. You sit down with them, hey, show them the tape. This is what you're going to get better at. They work on it on their own, okay, in the off season. Then when they come back to here with us in April, then we start working on the detailed plan. But we don't just say, okay, hey, that's good. We have a detailed plan in terms of how to work towards that all the way through. And then when you improve that skill, you move to the next one. You move to the next one. So it's a plan in place, and I'm looking forward to doing it with all the players.
And can I add on that real quick? One thing we talked about too is anytime you evaluate a player and put a plan in place, the big thing is finding out what they do well. And whatever they do well, maximizing that, and then find their weakness and do what Coach just said in terms of attacking the weakness to get better in those other areas. But I think the key thing is, what do you do well? And we're going to do that a lot, and then fix the holes and get better as we go.
Herb Howard, the Bigs Media. Congratulations to you both.
Thank you.
Ryan, at what point in your process did you realize that you and the Bears were in lockstep about Coach Eberflus? And was there ever any point where you had a candidate in mind that you wanted to bring in after the 3 finalists were kind of predetermined?
That's a good question. So when we went through the process, it was a Zoom first, so I was able to give a list of candidates that I really liked, and Matt was on that. And when I got here in person, we brought him in, and the moment he walked in the room, I knew he was the guy, and especially when he started going through his plan. And the big thing to know is I reach out to a lot of people to make sure I'm lined up the right way. I reach out to people that have done it and been successful at it. And every single person said, when you know, you know. When you know you got one, you got one. And I'm a guy that when I have conviction about it, it's time to go. So that's kind of how everything fell into place.
David off of 670 The Score. So I know you've been a defensive coordinator, so saying an effort-based approach makes sense defensively because it's all about effort.
Sure.
But offensively, how does that apply? Because there's so much more that goes into it, the approach, balance, than just effort.
Yeah, sure. A lot of times when you talk about offense, you talk about plays. You always hear that, this play was wrong, that play was wrong. To me, it's about concepts. So we're going to install the concepts, in the spring. We got to do a great job of building a base of our foundation, okay, of what our concepts look like. Run concepts, pass concepts, play action concepts, screens, everything that goes along with running an offense. I've been defending offenses for 30 years. Well, it's going to be my input, okay, with Luke and the rest of the offensive staff about a dual education. Hey, what is the defensive guys looking at, okay, in terms of, yeah, this is hard on us, this is not hard on us. And I'm excited about having those conversations. But to go back to the original point, that how do you measure that? How do you measure those, foundational pieces? I'm going to get with the offensive staff and everybody to talk about, hey, what's the receiver look like blocking on the backside? What does a running back look like when he splits 2? How do you get hidden yards, okay? How do you do that, okay? And I'm excited about going from 8, all the way through it and making sure that we're squared away, how we do measure that. And it takes time. It takes time. It takes a couple hours to read the tape after the game and looking at the details of that, of how we want to operate. And so what you'll see on tape, and you'll see from the global view of it, you'll see, man, these guys play. They play fast. They play physical. They play Chicago tough. And that's what you'll end up seeing.
Hi, Matt and Ryan. Alex Shapiro, NBC Sports Chicago. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Each of you drew serious interest from teams around the league for their vacancies. I'm wondering, what was it about the Bears situation that made you want to come to Chicago?
Yeah, it's the history of this place. There was a standard, of being a championship caliber team. And on top of that, like I said, my relationship with George in terms of I got a feel for what this place is all about. And that got me excited. And I feel like, it has potential if we put the right players in and we coach hard. We're going to get back to where we belong.
Hey, Matt, Kevin Fishbane from The Athletic. I'm wondering when Luke Getsy first kind of got on your radar, and what were some of the qualities that led you to bring him in as your offensive coordinator?
Yeah, so, during the course of your time in the NFL, 13, 14 years now in the league, you look at certain offenses, you look at certain styles, and you look at the tree of which certain people come from, and then you look and see how they operate. I'm big into metrics and raising, and measuring how people operate in terms of their efficiency, and they have certainly been that where he's been. And then you look at different things, then you start calling around and asking about the man, and that's where Luke is special. He's special that way. He's tough, innovative, smart, okay, and works well with team. He's a big team guy, so I'm excited about where he is, and he's been on my radar for a while. Obviously we go through the process of looking at everybody and interviewing, a lot of guys, and talking to a lot of people about making this big decision, so we're excited about it.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Ryan. Mike Berman from NBC Chicago. Congrats on the jobs. For both of you, I'm hoping you can both weigh in on this. For both of you, it's the first time in this big chair. What do you think the biggest challenges will be because of that?
I think just getting up and running in terms of putting our plan, it's really time, right? So you have free agency coming up, the Senior Bowl is going on. There's a lot of things that the other teams have already been preparing for because they had everything in place. So I think it's time. It's getting up and getting running and getting our process into place. And that's going to take some strategy of what we're going to change now and what we're going to change later in terms of how we think and how our meetings are going to go. So it definitely would be time.
Yeah, and for me, it's selection of the right people, putting the right people in place. Because, in this business and every business, you have to be able to honor, relationships and results. And putting the right people in place that can do those two things. Relationships, building those, but also honor results. Because this is a results business, right? So the selection process for me, as we're dealing with, right now, the immediate process of that is selecting coaches. So how can I do a great job of evaluating with Ryan, with George, and us together, coming up with the right plan of the people we bring in as coaches? Because that's the most immediate. These chairs are filling up. We got to do a great job. And I'm not in a big hurry. We're not in a big hurry because we want to make the right decision. So what do you look for in a coach? You look for a guy that wants to partner with players. He has to be able to do that. So that takes the right kind of heart and the right kind of mindset, to be able to do that. Because you're really here to serve and be of service of the player. And how do you do that? Well, there's a couple ways you do that. Well, you have to model the right behavior. You have to do that. Because if you want your player to be calm, cool, collected, focused in the game, guess what? You, as the partner, the coach, have to be calm, cool, collected, and focused. That's what you have to be, right? And the next thing is be inspirational. You have to be able to inspire. So we're looking for guys that can do that, in that partnership with the player. You got to be able to inspire them. And the third thing, and probably one of the most important things, is challenge. You have to have the heart and the mindset to be able to challenge these guys, because you push them to places they couldn't go themselves. And that's what you do as a coach. That's what you do as a coach. And the last part is, when you do this, when you model, inspire, and you challenge, the last part is encourage. Because there's going to be bumps along the road, right? There's going to be downs, right? It's going to get down. It's going to get up. It's going to get down. How do we handle with the success and adversity? But it all goes back to the selection process. We've got to get the right kind of guys that are able to do that partnership. That's so important with the player.
Hey, Ryan. Patrick Finley from the Chicago Sun-Times. We saw you hire an assistant GM. There hadn't been one of those in the last regime. Can you tell us, how are you going to structure the front office? And what is the role of analytics in your evaluation of a team? And are you going to hire an analytics department or a person or add to it in any way?
Yeah, the first question you asked with the assistant GM, I thought it was important to bring someone else in with even more experience from a different place. Ian's background with the Ravens and then the Eagles, he's seen a lot, under Howie Roseman and Ozzie Newsome, and to add that experience is critical. And then, the big thing is, I've been in a place with turnover, and there's great people in every building. So I want to take the time to evaluate everyone else and get to know them and see what we have. In terms of analytics, absolutely. And I've been blown away. There's some great analytic people in here. We've had we've jumped down rabbit holes talking about different things we want to do. So I'm excited about that. It definitely is a part of our process. It's challenging what our eyes see. And I think that's a beautiful thing about all the data that we have now, is we can challenge what we see and then make the proper decision based off of that. I've always used the analogy, I know how to get home, right? But I plug it into Waze anyways, because it might tell me that there's an accident 2 miles up the road, I can go a different direction, I can still get home in a faster time. Why would we not use that information? So I believe in it, and I'm excited to get started with it.
Kane from the Chicago Tribune. You've been able to work under a few different GMs and coaches. How have those different experiences helped you?
Yeah, I mentioned this before. I was able to take a course, a Stanford leadership course, and one of the one of the topics was called breaking authenticity. And it really resonated with me because I was able to learn from 3 different GMs that were very, very different. And each one brought some unique things to the table that I was able to use and kind of collect and allow me to be here and then start to use that philosophy to build my own team and our team.
Hey, Ryan, Adam Hogue, NBC Sports Chicago. You kind of explained why you went with Matt in the end. Can you give us a background on why he was on your list initially? That first Zoom call, you mentioned how he was on your list of candidates. Like, what's the background with you guys, or why did you target him originally as a possibility to be the head coach?
Yeah. So the beautiful thing about the NFL is what you see on tape usually is a reflection of the person behind it. And it was a fast, violent effort, a very good defense, but it was more the style that they played with that got my attention. And then just everyone networks and tries to get to know people throughout the league. So I was able just to call him and meet him, years ago, just to understand what he was all about, what kind of person he was. And from that, there's a little bit of a relationship, but it went even deeper when we got into the interview process.
Ryan, Dan Weeder at the Tribune again. What point in your career journey did you begin envisioning becoming a general manager? And as an extension of that, going through the interview process a year ago in Carolina, I'm curious what that experience did for you in terms of crystallizing your vision and allowing you to figure out how to communicate it going forward.
Yeah. I can't pinpoint like the exact moment, but it was really seeing the progress and the process start to show itself from where we started in Kansas City to where we ended up. That gets you excited because you're like, I can take some of these things. It's not cookie cutter. I can't just take that model and bring it here, but I can bring all the different pieces. And that got me excited, and that gave me the confidence to know that I can do this. In terms of the interview last year, I would say it just gave me a ton of confidence to be like, I absolutely am ready, because that's the question, like, are you ready to do this? I am, because I was able to put my philosophy together and give it, and it was well received. It didn't happen then, but I knew that at some point it would. So just getting through that process last year just helped me gain more confidence to do it this year. So, yep.
Gentlemen, hi. Cheryl Racedout, WBEZ Radio. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Ryan, you talked about building through the draft.
Yep.
This year, you only have 5 draft selections. How do you accumulate more, or is there a plan to be able to do that?
Yeah, there's always options to get more draft picks. But we have to get together and see what that looks like. That comes in different forms and fashions. But, at the end of the day, we have what we have, and we're going to do the absolute best to maximize those draft picks. And if that means the original draft picks that we have or finding ways to gain more, we'll do that.
Joe Lewis, Barbershare Network. First, all correct, congratulations to you both.
Thank you.
It's nice to meet you. This question's for you, Matt. You talked about no stupid penalties. Unfortunately, the Bears, for the past several years, have been making costly penalties at really costly times. How do you break down a foundation, and really, how do you stop that from happening with players who are in the game when you're not in there physically? How are you able to really do that, I'm really asking?
Yeah, I think it's through education. We're teachers. Coaches are really just teachers. That's all we are. We're just teaching football. So you educate. You educate through film. You educate through having officials out there. You educate how important it is to winning, what that penalty did to us in terms of a negative sense, and what playing clean football does for us for a winning sense. So I think that's important. That's just the education process. And you always just touch on it. We'll have a situations tape, where we talk about being smart players, every single week where we go through it with the players, teach them the rules, what's allowed, what isn't allowed, so we can decrease the penalties. So it's a process that you go through, but it's really about education.
Hey guys, Kaylin Kaler from Defector. Welcome to Chicago. This question's for Ryan. I saw on the Bears Twitter feed that you showed up for work before sunrise on your first day. So I'm wondering, what time was that at when you actually kind of showed up at the building? And second part of that would be, why is that important to you to make that first impression there?
Yeah. 6 o'clock. Yeah. It's more than first impression. It's a routine. I think if you asked a lot of people about me, I'm curious and I'm observant. And what I do know from those that I've worked for is your time's limited. And if you can capture a couple hours in the morning and a couple hours at night when things are quiet, you can really maximize how much you do. And that's important to me because, you know, in the NFL, things pop up all the time. So you're going to get pulled in different directions. So I just know I can guarantee, for the most part, that those parts of the day, I can get things done.
Matt, Ryan, Mark Potash from Chicago Sun-Times. My question's for Ryan. Every GM says he wants to build through the draft, but how do you do that? What is the key to it? What is the key to evaluation? Why are some GMs better than others? And what have you learned, and what do they do in Kansas City that you learned that can make you better than others? And to that end, what was your impact on the evaluation of Mahomes in 2017?
Yeah, so in terms of building through the draft, I think what's key is, one, knowing what scheme you're running and finding players that fit. That's first and foremost. I think a lot of players get missed if you bring someone in. If I bring someone in going against what we're running, well, then it's not tied together, and that's hard to fit. The types of players, in terms of their background, what they're about, how passionate they are about football is important too. That's the other place where, you know, misses can happen in terms of, do they love football? Because this is hard. This is really hard. Being a player is very hard. And you got to love it to get up in the morning and want to be the best you can be. And then the piece I hit on earlier in terms of valuation, you got to be able to prioritize certain positions because of supply and demand and place them on the board where you can get them. And I think that's the other important part. In terms of Pat, listen, even in the interview process, I said this, I'm not taking credit for any player. The beautiful thing of the process that I'm coming from, and it'll be the process here, it's a group effort. We all get in a room. We're going to start here shortly. We watch tape, and it's open. And I mentioned candor. We're going to be candid. We want to challenge each other without being disrespectful. And that's the only way to get to the truth. So that process was special. A lot of people spoke up. There's different factors that went into it. So I'll give credit to the process. So.
Question for Matt, Jason Leisure again. You're conveying in this press conference at least a very calm, business-like demeanor. I'm curious how much of that is indicative of your coaching style and management style. And somewhat related to that, do you feel like you have been actively looking for a head coaching job, or were you waiting back for the right opportunity to come to you?
Yeah, in terms of my demeanor, that is what it is. You know, I do want to, you know, be intense and focus on the job at hand for sure. I am detail-oriented, meaning that I will hold guys to the standard, and I do it the right way because I do it through my heart and making sure I'm trying to find the best way to make them better. You know, in terms of your last question, I do believe that when you go through this process, you are where your feet are, and exactly that means exactly that you do your best job where you are. So if you're the defensive coordinator at Missouri, you are doing the very best job you can. If you're the secondary coach at the University of Toledo, you do the very best job you can, and that's what I believe. One action at a time, one dealing at a time. Have a long view and a short view. Have a long view where you want to go, okay, but then come back down to the short view of the details it takes to get there. So that's what I believe.
Matt Zahn from CBS Chicago. This question is for Matt. You mentioned right off the top to your players to get their track shoes on because you're going to be doing a lot of running. Now, do you ever worry about sort of a message like that kind of wearing thin with players after a while? And do you feel like you have to change anything about your coaching style now that you're in charge of everything?
No, I don't think it'll wear thin because that's the rudiments of the game, the fundamentals of the game. So if you're talking about 1920 or you're talking about 2022, those aren't going to change, right? So the premium is on the ability, maximum effort. You'll never know how good your football team's going to be until you play with maximum effort, and you're only cheating yourself. So to me, that's never going to get old. Okay, I might say it a different way. Now, I might say track shoes or some other type of shoe, but I'm just saying that, you know, the ability to run, and that's coupled with who we bring in. You know, the speed, the explosive athletic ability of the players we acquire, okay, is going to be as or more important, you know, of what we want to get done. So, yeah.
Patrick Finley from the Sun-Times again. You're a first-time head coach. Your offensive coordinator is a first-time offensive coordinator. As you fill out your staff, are you going to put an emphasis on experience? You know, would you like a former head coach here to help you along the way? Would you like somebody with 20 years of coordinator experience? Or I'm throwing out hypotheticals here, but
Yeah.
how will you round out a staff to make the experience level what you
Yeah,
want?
so I talked before a little bit about what I want in a coach, you know, so now you're talking about something that's different. So you're talking about chemistry now. So chemistry is getting people to work together, okay, with the right mindset. You know, having able to partnership, have a brotherhood with another guy, because the offense and defensive staff, special team staff, to me, they're certainly working together, you know, all the time. And I want to call that, I say to the guys jokingly, I say, hey guys, we're soulmates, but we're also cellmates, because we are in there 24/7 together. So the chemistry of that, of us working together, you know, for the common good, is important to bring the right people together in terms of the guy, the man, the coach, and that's going to be a big process. So to me, when I'm looking at, you know, and we're looking at the offensive staff, we're looking at the defensive staff, it's a combination of all those things. And we'll take it one step further. Okay, so you got offense, defense, and kicking. More importantly, of the whole global part of it, okay, because I've been on staffs where the offense is over here, the defense is over here, and the special teams is over there. No, we're crossing the aisle. We're going to cross the aisle. There is going to be no aisle. Okay, we're going to go like this. And the same thing with our football team. Quarterback, defensive line, receivers, you know, tight ends, you know, linebackers, this way, combined, because we're building a football team, not an offensive unit, not a defensive unit, not a special teams unit, and it starts with the coaches.
From The Athletic, this is for you, Ryan. As you're weighing your situation, comparing the Bears with other teams, namely the Vikings, I'm curious, how appealing was it to have a young quarterback on his rookie contract, and what do you think you were left with here from the previous regime in terms of building blocks, core pieces for your team?
Yeah, there's always, you know, talented players, you know, in every organization, and that's especially true here. I'm excited, you know, to have Justin and to put him in a position to succeed and get players in the building that are going to help amplify his ability.
Hey, man, Mark Grody again from The Score. The Bears have run a 3-4 defense for the past several years. Are you open to keeping that, or will you go with sort of what you have been?
Yeah, so this will be the third time that we switch, you know, from a 3-4 to a 4-3, or that I've been involved in that switch over. But will we have elements and pieces of a 3-4? Sure, we have that. We're going to adjust and move and be flexible. We're going to look at the talents and skill level of the players we have, and we're going to coach and develop those guys. And we'll fit our scheme around those players. But the foundational pieces won't change in terms of how we play.
I'm Michelle Steele from ESPN. This is a question for Ryan. I had a follow-up about your process, and congratulations to you guys as well. You said that the moment that Matt walked into the room, you knew that he was the guy. What did you see in Matt's coaching experience, you know, as his experience as a defensive coordinator, that he'd be the best fit for this team with a young quarterback to develop?
Yeah, it was his standard. He had a high standard for what he wanted out of a team, and he had a plan to raise the bar in terms of what we were going to become. His passion for the game, you know, his discipline, those are some of the key ingredients to get a team off the ground and headed in the right direction. And then, you know, connections to, you know, a really good staff as well. That was important, and a plan that wasn't just short-term, but there was long-term thought into it as well.
Matt, David Hogg again from The Score. So when you talk about inspiring and challenging and encouraging players, does that still work with professional athletes? Aren't they mostly interested in how you can improve them rather than inspire them at this stage of their careers?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I believe that's part of it. You know, if you're going to improve them, you have to inspire them to change, because everything comes from the heart. You know, when you think about how we do things and how we change, let's think about habits for a second. You know, so how do you go from, we all want to hope, you know, it's New Year's, right? We all want to hope we lose 20 pounds, me included, right? So then okay, I want to read more, I want to listen better, right? We always have those hopes, right? You know, so hopes, how do you turn hopes into habits? How do you do that? Well, first of all, look at the mistakes people make. Well, they understand, you know, what they want to do, lose weight, read, right, all that, right? But they don't understand how. How do you do it, right? So you have to study, you have to learn. You got to make sure you do that, right? The next thing is that people, when they go from hopes to habits, the next mistake they make is they get going and it's too hard. They don't see results, right? So what do? They stop. They stop. We've all done that. I've done it, right, with losing weight and all that stuff, right? So hopes to habits. And then the last thing is you have to have a healthy identity of yourself, because that's the most important thing. And that comes from the inside. Your healthy identity of yourself creates what? Wise decisions. Wise decisions creates healthy habits. So there you go, back and forth, and it goes around and around. So it's turning, you got your hopes to habits, and that turns now, once you get your habits established, it turns to victories. And that's what it does. So to me, it's you're dealing with a person from the inside out. Okay, that's how you affect real change, and it starts right there.
Guys, Hub Arkish again, Pro Football Weekly and Shaw Media. This is really for both of you. You both had multiple interviews, and I'm wondering how much time, or did you have time to spend studying the roster, the talent already here, and how much of an impact did that have on your desire to be here?
Yeah, before any interview, you need to take the time to know, what that team has and what it needs. So that was, a big factor in terms of this interview.
Yeah, I would say that it starts really from, when you look at it, what's the potential? I know potential's a taboo word in football, but, what's the dynamic of the team? Starting with the leadership with George, of the support that he's going to give in the Chicago Bears, what that brings to the table. And then certainly you look at that. That's a big piece of it.
Deion Miller again from ABC7 here in Chicago. Matt, my question for you is, obviously you've gotten buy-in from defensive players. How do you get buy-in from an entire team and in knowing how to establish the right culture?
Yeah, I just show them the why. Show them the why. So all you do is you show them why it is, and how does what I'm asking and what we're going to ask as a staff and what we're going to ask as a franchise, the things we're going to hold them accountable to, the standards, why? What does it equal? Winning. It equals winning. So the elite teams in the league do this, and this is why they win. Coupled with obviously the talent, we start establishing that ground level, our floor for our house, the cement that we got to pour, that's going to take time, and then we're going to start building our house. When you build a house, that's player acquisition, that's skill level, right? It starts to rise, but you cannot win a championship right here without that foundational pieces there. Because what will happen is stuff will happen, and guess what? It's going to crack, it's going to fall down. So we got to make sure that we do a great job with the foundational pieces. But to answer your question, it's always about the why equals winning.
Coach, there's obviously going to be roster turnover, but of the guys that are on this roster, defensively, as a defensive guy, who are some of the players on this roster that excite you? And can you speak specifically about Roquan Smith and what your plan may be for him?
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that excite me. Roquan is certainly one of them. I'm not going to get into details for every single position, every single player, but yes, there's a lot of talent, a lot of guys that play the game the right way, and we certainly need to improve how we're doing that, but that's part of the process.
Matt, understanding that you've obviously got a lot more to watch on Justin, I'm curious what your thumbnail scouting report on Justin is as a quarterback, and then along with that, how you see Luke having the ability to energize Justin when they get together.
Yeah, just a thumbnail, athletic, right? Super, leader. I think he's going to be really good. In terms of that, we got to develop all those things. But in terms of like with Luke, he's, like I said, very innovative, very smart. He's excited to get to work with him, when he's able to. But yeah, that's going to be a nice thing to watch and be part of.
Hey, Matt, Alex Shapiro at NBC Sports Chicago again. I'm curious, have you spoken to any of the players yet about making the transition to a 4-3 defense? And if so, what's their reception been?
Yeah, I haven't. I've spoken to players, but not about football. Just about, introducing myself, pleasantries, talking to them, saying, just talking to them about ball and, just general things right now. So about several players. I've texted them, talked to them, saw some guys in the training room. Guys have come to me and met with me in my office and stuff, but it's been great.
Yeah, Joe Louis Barber Chair Network again. Matt, this question is about vocal leadership in the locker room. How important is that for you? I know George McCaskey talked about David Montgomery and Roquan Smith and how important their leadership is. How important is it for you to not only have someone who can lead by example, but actually lead by talking within the locker room?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's the chicken before the egg, right? The question of, hey, is it better to have a vocal leader or a guy that leads by example? And to me, I always say to the guys, and I'll say this, is that it's doing. You do. You inspire by doing, by performing in execution first, and then you do it by your words. So it's to me, it's in that order. It's in that order.
Hey guys, Kaylin Kaler with Defector again. The last few regimes here haven't been aligned completely in terms of head coach, general manager, and quarterback. Most recently, you had Pace who hired Nagy, but then Nagy inherited Mitch Trubisky. Pace inherited Jay Cutler. So you guys are obviously inheriting a quarterback here as well. So I'm curious for your thoughts on how, why you think that will work, and what are the challenges in inheriting a quarterback that you didn't get to pick yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited to get to work, with Matt and come up with that plan. I know, from our conversations that we're lined up and we have a plan of attack, and we're confident about that. I understand, the past, but we're focused on moving forward. We have a talented player that you've mentioned, and we're going to attack it. And I know he's got the work ethic to get it done too. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and I'm excited about organizing with Ryan, our offensive staff, and getting those guys together. And those guys start to meet, and ideas start to go, and they start to formulate, terminology, formations, motions, shifts, and as they get going there, and then, working that out as we get to April, and then getting the players on the field. So that's what I'm excited about.
Matt, Adam Hogue again. Quick question and a follow-up. Do you plan on calling the defense as a head coach, or do you envision kind of overlooking everything and handing those responsibilities off to your DC?
Okay. You want to do the follow-up question now? Or?
Well, sure. The follow-up is kind of unrelated, but I was curious, last year when you prepped to play the Bears, I know some of the personnel is different, but when you went into that game, what types of things were you worried about when you were prepping? I think you held them to 11 points in that game.
Yeah. Yeah, so to answer your first question, I do believe that to be the head football coach and be efficient at that, you are exactly the head football coach. So I can be involved in all aspects of the game. So the defensive coordinator that we hire will call the defensive plays. I will not do that, okay? In terms of like when I played, when we came up here, a couple years ago, I think now, it's like anything. It's an X and O matchup, and you look at it as that, and you design your defense what you feel is relative to, for victory. And, and we, want to bring that same style here, to encompass what we're doing, in terms of the hitting, taking the ball away, playing with maximum intensity, right? And being smart about how we do it.
Hey, Matt, Kevin Fishbane again from The Athletic. Ryan talked about his first impression of you. I'm wondering what you knew about him in terms of evaluating, because you obviously are going to want to be aligned with a GM who's going to share your vision, and
Yep.
someone who's going to pick players that you want to coach. So what did you know about him, and what did you kind of learn about him in this process?
Yeah, so just like Ryan was researching me, I'm researching him, and you go around the league and you ask other executives through the course of the league, man, you're talking about, innovative, smart, detailed, tough. That's the most important thing, tough. Are you tough mentally and physically to be able to do this job? And that was the one thing I inquired about. And everybody that I said answered, they answered yes, yes, and yes every single time. This guy's mentally and physically tough, because again, we're going to go up and down and be able to stay focused on the job at hand. And that's what they were saying about Ryan. And as I got to know him more, and we started talking, man, what a wonderful man he is. Number one, family man. That's important to me. Because that shows to me character, and it shows foundation to me. So he has that, obviously, but it's been a pleasure to get this, start this relationship.
Mike Mulligan from The Score. I'm just curious, there's been decent defense played here. They've played pretty good defense, but they can't score points, or they haven't been able to score touchdowns. Have you discussed how to change that? And you mentioned explosiveness. Is it as simple as that?
Yeah, explosive athletic ability is one of the traits we're looking for. And that equals chunk plays on offense, and it equals stopping chunk plays on defense. You want to score points, you gotta get chunk plays. You gotta get big plays. That's how you score. And how you eliminate scores, eliminate those plays. So that comes down to the athletes we're bringing in here. You see it all the time. Saw it last night, throwing a quick screen, and it's blocked well, but you can see the athlete on the perimeter take that thing to the, all the way to score a touchdown. So that's what we're looking for, and that's what we're going to do with the selection of the players, development of the players, and our scheme.
I'd like to add to that as well. I think it starts at the foundation in terms of the O-line and establishing that run game, which then leads to explosive plays. So we got to continue to work on that and get that to a level, and I think you'll start to see more points be scored, and more efficiency, more explosive plays. Everything kind of plays off of that. So that's going to be a focal point.
Hey guys, this is for both of you. John Greenberg from The Athletic. I had a question. You've talked about your mentors and kind of the road you've gotten here. Did you ask anyone questions about what it's like running an organization or being the head coach, and what kind of advice did you get, about starting off the right way?
Yeah, I certainly did ask that question. And starting off the right way, to me, is establishing a clear and concise vision for what you want the football team to look like, and that's what we're in the process of doing. We obviously started through the interview process with that vision, and we're getting it off the ground now and starting to move it in the right direction. So that's really what the advice I got.
For me, the common advice I got was discipline. Stay disciplined, because we all want to do things fast. We want results fast. There are shortcuts at every turn when you're building a roster. So being disciplined and doing things the right way, and that's hard, because we all, we want championships right now, and we're going to aim for that. But we have to do smart things to build a roster, and not things that are just going to, shortcut us to where we want to go.
Hey guys, Adam from The Athletic again. I'm curious, as you're meeting with other teams, the Jaguars, the Vikings, and whatnot, Bill Polian's place in the Bears interviews, what was that like? How would you describe his input, the feedback, the conversations about football that you guys had with Bill Polian through your interview process with the Bears?
I thought it was great. I started asking him questions. Like if you're open-minded, like why would you not tap into that resource? And that'll continue. I call them multiple times after, and I'll continue to do so. Anytime you meet someone that's been a high achiever, I think it's incredible.
Yeah, I'll add to that. Just a Hall of Fame executive. Built tremendous rosters at a few spots, and to have a conversation, with the committee, with George and Bill, to me that was a treat. I just enjoyed that. I was sitting up in my study, and just on Zoom, and man, it was a treat to do that, and I really enjoyed it.
Hey guys, Mark Rohde from The Score again. What is the next 48 hours going to be like for you guys in terms of getting right to work? And how much sleep have each of you had in the last 48 hours?
Yeah, we were just talking about that. We actually both slept very good last night. But the couple of nights before that weren't that great. Waking up at 3 and stuff like that, and thinking about have a pad next to your bed and be able to write stuff down so you can at least attempt to go back to sleep. But for me, the 48 hours is just working hand in hand with Ryan. For me directly, really talking to putting slips in, talking to coaches, and selection of coaches is probably the most pressing thing for me right now.
Yeah, we have free agency coming up, so we're going to start meetings tomorrow. We're going to shoot down to Senior Bowl to get our eyes on those players and meet the scouts that are down there as well. So it's coming quick. So we're trying to get all those things laid out.
Ryan, Mark Potash from the Sun-Times again. I just wanted to circle back to the hiring of Matt. This is your first hire as a GM. What experience do you have in hiring, interviewing people that has led you to trust your intuition about head coaches as opposed to having a more expansive search?
Yeah, it's what translates really well is when you interview a lot of players over the last 10 to 14 years. You're looking for key things. You have a checklist of what you're looking for in that person, in that player, and it really isn't that much different in looking for a leader. You had certain criteria you were looking for, and there's been times where we've interviewed players and you go, there's something about that guy. And sure enough, they end up having a really good career and being successful because they just embody everything you're looking for.
Just a quick follow-up. If you were given the opportunity to do a more expansive search, would you have done it?
I was given the opportunity. I found him.
Ryan, you were a little bit emotional in your introduction when you were talking about the guys in Kansas City. I'm curious if you could sort of explain what was behind that emotion for you and what turning that page is like for you here.
Yeah, I grew up with those guys, you know. We joked about it all the time just in terms of, you know, starting at the very bottom and working up. And for a lot of them, I have deep relationships with that. When we first started, it was hard. It was really, really hard. It was difficult. There was a lot of losing. There was a lot of pushback. And when you fight through something with people, you grow tight with them. And when you have success with them, it's even better. And that's what I look forward to doing here. But that's the emotional part. Like, you go through a lot with people and have success. You have a bond that it'll be a lifetime friendship.
With that, with Brett Veach in particular, what are some of the things you learned about being a general manager from being under him?
Yeah, the big thing is collaboration. He brought all of us together. It was open door. Let's sit down and let's fix the problem. Brett has a relentlessness in terms of attacking a roster that I've never seen before. His brain doesn't stop coming up with scenarios, and he throws it to us. Not afraid if it doesn't make sense or if it doesn't work, but he just continues to throw those ideas out, and collectively we bounce it around and we form a plan and we execute. So just that relentlessness to fix the roster and to improve the roster and get good players on the team is kind of what I take from him.
Ryan, this is Pat at the Sun-Times again. Curious what your relationship with Matt Nagy was from being together with the Chiefs, and do you reach out to him when you're considering this? Do you get a scouting report at all from him?
I reach out to everyone, and you know, we did cross paths in Kansas City, and I thought he's a really good man. And you know, I know it didn't work out here, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I reached out to him just to get a lay of the land and understand where he might have messed up. I think that's the thing about a lot of people in my life that I mentioned before, including Matt, is they all take ownership of their experiences. And I would challenge any leader, any GM, any head coach to make sure that you do that with your understudies and your mentors and your friends, because that helps me avoid some potholes and things, you know, that I won't get tripped up on because you opened up to me and said, hey, this is where I messed up, or I wish I did this a little bit different. So I'm taking notes like crazy, talking to all of these people that I've mentioned today. It only helps me.
A few more, Jesse.
Jesse Rogers, ESPN. Now this is for you, Ryan. Why many former players go into the coaching carousel? Why the executive route, and along those lines, why do you think you're maybe suited better to be an executive than a coach?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. It happened early. The thought of building a roster just always, you know, resonated with me, and it's what I wanted to do. I think it's interesting to be able to change culture of a team by bringing in people that reflect that. If you keep adding those same type of players to the roster, all of a sudden you're tough, you're passionate, you run hard to the ball, you're violent, you're fast. That, to me, it's a really cool process. And when you see the end result, I think that's very rewarding.
Hey, Matt, Ryan, Nicholas Moriano, the Chicago Audible. Matt, where did the idea come from to use the ball hawk shirts when your defense gets turnovers, and do you plan to bring that here to Chicago?
Yeah, we'll certainly talk about it. It was very effective, you know. So the ball hawk shirts we give to all the guys, you know, and the point system is a point system that has been used here before. You know, you get 1 point for a cause, 1 point for a recovered, you know, 1 point for an interception, 2 points for a score, and that's a board that goes back 30 years. You know, and the Chicago Bears of the old were, you know, Urlacher, Pepper, you know, Peppers, Tillman, all those guys, Briggs, they were part of that. They're on that board in terms of the number, the all-time number, you know. So those numbers are carried through it right there, and we give a guy a ball hawk shirt every time and a ball hawk trophy at the end, who's the leader of the football team. So I'm excited about talking to the staff about that, but it'll be certainly a topic of conversation.
David Hoff on the score again, just for the sake of accuracy. Do you guys have the same agent, and did that relationship have anything to do with you guys knowing each other prior to this process or throughout the process?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, you know, in terms of just getting a hold of each other, you know, in contact with each other, that plays a part.
Yeah, it's just, it was easy transition, or easier, I should say.
Herb Howard, the Bigs Media. Coach, philosophically, and obviously you'll may shift game by game on game situations, but as a general philosophy, will you coach to your defense? Meaning, like, when it's time to make decisions on maybe punting versus going forward, will you kind of coach to your defenses in terms of putting them in the best position possible? Is that a philosophy of yours?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think that's a game-by-game decision. You got to look at the situation of the game. Who are you playing on offense? Who you're playing on defense on the opposing side? I think all those things come into play of your decisions to go for it, you know, or you know, the decisions made in the game. So.
Two more, Brad. Go ahead.
Brad Biggs, Chicago Tribune. I'm wondering if you guys could share the length of the contracts that you signed.
Yeah, so we're not going to discuss the length of contracts here today, so we're not doing that.
Last one. Alex Shapiro, NBC Sports Chicago again. Matt, I'm curious, given your experience as the defensive passing coordinator in Dallas, thinking about how you attacked passing attacks, does that influence you, or rather, does that leak into the offensive room? Would you go to Luke, hey, here's how I would attack us. Will you help out in any of that regard, or is it kind of going to be Luke's show?
Yeah, I'm excited about doing that. That's a great question. That's the kind of the dual education that I'm talking about for the quarterback and also for the offensive staff. You know, where I can go in there and say, hey guys, this is the coverage they're running. This is how you attack it with this route concept. And it doesn't have to look the same. It can look different. You can formation it different. You can put different motions to it. But this is a problem. And here are the tells. Here are the tells, the alignments of what you're going to see. This guy's giving it away. This guy's not giving it away. And then really be able to attack coverages that way. So I'm excited about going on the other side and doing that.
All right, we'll pose here for a hold the helmet. Photo op.